Hey everyone, I'm Allan McKay. No, I'm not. Yeah, we thought it would actually be, it might be kind of weird, Allan introducing himself, although I'm sure he would have loved to. But for those who don't know me, I'm Dan Rory. I've been friends with Allan for actually quite some time. I met Allan probably pretty close to a decade ago. First worked together at Activision, and there's basically two things I noticed right away after meeting Allan. One, how extremely talented he was, which I'm sure everybody knows. And two, how much he loves to drink. And I'm sure everybody knows that as well. It's kind of funny seeing Allan wearing jeans or pants right now, because I actually know Allan most of the time he's actually wearing shorts, even in -2-degree weather and stuff. I think he even did the presentation last year in shorts. But yeah, it's actually a real honor introducing Allan. I don't think I have to, his rise to the top with visual effects, it's pretty incredible. Like the projects and the studios he worked on, ILM, Pixamundo, Blur, Plastic Wax. I mean, I could go on and on. And what I love, and I think everybody does as well, is his dedication and passion for training other artists. And I find that really inspiring. I could keep going on and on about Allan, but I think I'm just gonna bring him out here, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Allan McKay.
Thank you. Cheers. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. I'm taking advantage of my touchscreen laptop. Cool. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dan, for doing your best to mention my alcohol problem. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to dive right into this, because I loved Ash the other day. I was talking to him, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go a few minutes over the talk. And I'm like, really? You know how long your talks go for? For me, I'm always like, I'm just going to start hitting next, like everyone else does at a certain point. So I'm going to roll right into this. But for me, yeah, I originally was going to do a talk, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I told Patrice that maybe next year I'll do some like turntable, wireframe stuff, and everyone could be like, ooh, particles or whatever. But I wanted to do something a bit more relevant. I thought about doing a talk on how to build your personal brand or something like that, but I thought I'd go a bit deeper than that and do something a bit different, which for me is I wanted to talk about my fuck-ups, or sorry, failure here. And I love everyone swearing. I'm like, all right, good, I can get away with it. So I thought this would be really relevant just because for me, whenever I do attend talks where instead of them talking about their success, like, oh yeah, we did this thing and it went really well and we got this result, there's been a few times where I've gone to talks where they're like, we did this and we failed, we did this and we failed, and eventually we found the right result. And for me, that's always been the ones that I walked away from learning something. And if my clicker's gonna work, that's going to suck. Let me start this again really, really quick, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. Sorry, bear with me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Essentially, yeah, there we go. Das ist ein sexy. So, I hate making slides, by the way. But for me, I remember I went to one talk in Australia. It's RSP, who does like Jungle Book, everything, all these really amazing films. They were doing a talk on Harry Potter, and they were talking about this, like the Goblet of Fire, something, this big eagle on fire, and how they went about doing it. And they talked about like 6 months of going down the wrong path. And it was amazing because I was about to start this production called Daybreakers, and we were going to do all this like fluids, characters burning alive, and all this crazy stuff. There's a little girl burning up at the very beginning of the movie, which, by the way, was really awesome because I had a maquette of her burned it to a crisp, this 9-year-old girl, on my desk for about 6 months. And the young girl actually came to visit and see what we've done, and she was so excited at 9 years old to see herself burn alive and an end result. And I don't know, I would have been freaked out, but it was kind of cool. And funny thing is, this week I'm actually working on a new production where they're like, all right, we're gonna have all these like vampires and zombies get like burned alive and killed, and there's this little girl on fire, and I think this is my 5th or 6th little girl that I've killed. There's God of War and all these other ones, so I don't know. I don't want to put that on my business card. But getting back to the point, 6 months of going down the wrong path with RSP was great for me because I was able to apply that to what I was doing. 6 months of their failures was something that I could piggyback on and apply to going down the right path for me the right time, the first time. And I thought that if all of us were to come on stage and talk about all of our life lessons, I would pay tens of thousands of dollars to sit in the audience and just be like soaking all that up because I think it's so critical and we don't talk about it enough. And the worst part is I think that a lot of us really don't know, we don't feel comfortable with it. We think that failure is a bad thing. And I love that some of us, like Goro and a few other people, have talked about failure this time, and it's been like, yes, this is so relevant. These are some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go through it so damn fast, but hopefully I can get through as much as I can. Some of the things I'm going to talk about is self-doubt, feeling like a fraud, pain points. One of the things I'm sure we'll get a lot from is kind of controversial is how I was able to earn $500,000 a year working as a 3D artist, just doing 3D from home. Just that alone, I think, is going to be an interesting one. Being ripped off by employers, by friends, everyone, my mom, I'm kidding, she was fine. Getting fired, homeless the same day when I was like a teenager. That was another one, which, again, you learn so much from these things, dealing with trolls, how I built my own company to sponsor myself to live in America. So again, looking for different paths, not going the same path that everyone else does, because I think it's Mark Twain, and I'm going to screw up the quote if I even attempt it, but it's like, yeah, I'm going to screw it up. But yeah, it's basically, you want to try and do something different. Like, don't go down the same path as everyone else. I think it was like when you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to reflect, or something like that. I hadn't planned to mention it. Otherwise, I would have been like, okay, time to do some Google. Again, I'll get away from the terrible slides in a moment, but I do think that there's a big thing about psychology is that we tend to beat ourselves up so much when we fail, and we quickly kind of get over it because that's the healthy mindset to have. And failure can mean setting out to do something and then not achieving it, but a lot of the time it's more setting out and not achieving something or doing something not socially normal or acceptable, or embarrassing yourself, things that socially people are going to look at you, laugh at you, judge you. Those are usually what we beat ourselves up on. It's not the secret failures that we have. It's also why accountability is a really key one, because when you put it out there that you're going to do something, like with Goro breakdancing, I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was so freaking cool that he was able to share that with us, but also the way that he did it. He went on stage, talked about this whole thing, but it was all about posting on a blog to the whole world that he's going to try over 12 months to learn to breakdance. And following that formula, you could apply it to anything. It doesn't need to be like, well, that's great for your hobbies. You do that for your job, your career, earning more money, all these things. So having that accountability, having that goal, having that one single thing that you're going for, I think is so powerful. So a lot of the time we tend to deflect rather than like accept that we fail. And this is like a healthy mindset that I actually have is like, let's say you were really mean to someone, you're a total dick, and you could beat yourself up about it and be like, yeah, I was doing the wrong, I shouldn't have done that. But over a couple of days or a couple of weeks, you're going to start to deflect away from that and start to change the story that you were in the right. Like, screw that person, it was all their fault, you don't want to think about it, you don't want to process it. And that's because we don't tend to linger on the negative stuff. Like, a healthy mindset actually changes the story because we're never in the wrong. It would be bad for us. An unhealthy mind is one that's going to stay on that and keep beating ourselves up. You're a failure, you're a loser, you'll never achieve anything. And that's why we tend to kind of get over it very quickly. For me, one of the key things that it's taken a lot of work to do is to really be present all the time in what I'm doing. I'm very self-aware of what I'm doing. A lot of people around me tend to think that I'm probably really hard on myself just because even in moments that are completely out of my control, I'm always thinking what I could have done better. And it's not because I'm a perfectionist, it's because I want to grow, I want to learn, and I want to be aware of bad habits, anything that I can change. And the only time you really can change bad habits is in the moment when you're doing them. That's when you can stop and say, wait, reframe and move forward. You got to be present to be able to break bad habits, to reprogram yourself. Now that is a bit woo-woo talking about this stuff, but I think it's so relevant just to discuss failure and what it is before we get on to everything else. And of course, it's okay, as in I think the key thing is it's okay to fail. Most of us don't act on doing something unless we're going to have a 100% success rate. So we're not willing to actually go out and do something unless we 100% know that we're going to achieve it, that we're going to succeed. So usually we tend to just idle and hesitate and procrastinate, or convince ourselves that, it's probably better I don't try at all because I'm not going to succeed in the long run. I think that the key thing is that those willing to fail are willing to get back up and try again, and they're the ones who are going to succeed, whereas most of us have a giant fear of failure. In fact, I've surveyed, I think now, hundreds of thousands of people. Confidence and fear of failure were the two big things really holding people back from getting their goals. I never expected that. I thought people would be like, I got to learn Houdini, or I got to learn Maya, or whatever it would be, that the surface level stuff. But people are actually pretty aware of like what are the deep kind of core things that are holding them back. I think that another thing is that a lot of us kind of waiting to execute at the right time. So it's like, I'm not going to apply at ILM until I'm this good. And with a lot of things, we're going to hesitate. We're going to hold off because we're waiting for the right time. We're waiting till we're perfect. Because of that, there's never a right time. We're never going to succeed. We're never going to feel like we're perfect because we're all work in progress. There's a book that I highly recommend called Ready, Fire, Aim. And I think it's a good philosophy, even just to take the book title and apply that to what you're doing. It's better to just go out there and do it and then revise, revise, revise. So Thomas Edison has a quote which I think he's kind of controversial because in my opinion, I kind of think he stole the light bulb from Tesla. But anyway, he's got a famous quote. People are like, yeah, bastard. So with Edison, though, like there is the famous quote that we all know, which was that it didn't take him 10,000 times of failing to succeed in making the light bulb. It was, I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And I think that's a positive way to look at it because you need to make those failures on the journey to actually succeed. So I think there's a lot of times like that I've personally set out. I was thinking about this last night, and I wasn't going to mention it, but I kind of had a bit of an epiphany where I'm like, I've actually set out recently on a few events where I've wanted to do something intentionally to fail, just because I wanted to know, like, okay, this radical thing I'm going to invest like all my money into and all my time, I'm going to do it to fail, because at least then I know and I can cross it off the list, because I'm a huge, avid fan of experimenting. And so I've gone down paths with the intention to fail and then been surprised because I've succeeded way beyond what I ever imagined I could have, because I went down that path that I would have never ever done other than just being like stubborn and like, I want to cross that off the list so I have a clear path of what works. And by doing that, I suddenly get results that I wouldn't have expected. I think that's so critical. If you go in expecting to fail, and the more I think about it now, the more I realize like there's been times on Transformers where I flew back from New York and I had a phone call where they're like, when you get in the morning, you need to jump on this shot. And we'd pulled a shot from another artist, really talented artist, just having a bad time on the thing, and our client was going to pull the shot from us. We had 24 hours to redo 6 weeks of work, and we had to redo like this giant city being destroyed. And again, I wasn't planning to talk about this, but it just came up. But that was one of these things where I sat down, I wasn't stressed. I had 24 hours to redo 6 weeks, so a month and a half of work from someone who was really talented. And I just sat down thinking, okay, well, I'm going to fail, but I'll do the best I can. And we managed to rescue the shot. Everyone was happy, and we rocked it out. And I think taking the pressure off of having high expectations and just thinking, I'll do the best I can, it just allowed me to survive and do it all, thinking, okay, I'm going to fail, but this is the best that I can do. So I'm going to roll through this really quick, but I want to put up this quote just because I think it was brilliant. I think that we all need to learn from our mistakes and really observe what we're doing. I mentioned before being present, because that's when you kind of are able to catch yourself and figure out what you could do better. And more importantly, I love this quote because I think he was like, we have a saying in Tennessee, it's like, fool me once, shame on you. And it's like, fool me, you can't get fooled again. You know, and what he's really trying to say, but unfortunately he's kind of retarded, is that fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I'm doing a Bushism right now. Fool me twice, shame on me. In other words, as long as you're able, thank you, I'm glad you're finding this hilarious. As long as you're learning from your mistakes, it's okay. If you keep making the same mistakes, that's when it's time for your supervisor, your boss, or someone to get pissed off. But we all make mistakes. Like, there's been times where I was really hard on myself because I tried never to fail, and when I did, I was expecting all hell to rain down on me. And I think when I was 18, my boss was like, dude, like, we're all going to have these times. It's okay. And as long as you hold on to those and use that to course correct, the next time you're not going to make that again. So you put that in the bank of not beating yourself up, but knowing that that's one of the 10,000 light bulbs to know that next time I'm going to do this, and each time you're going to get closer to that. So yeah, I think it's so critical. I always say it, but to get out of your comfort zone and try to fail. And I think the best way to look at it is like, what's the worst that can happen? So Goro brought this up the other day. I thought it was so cool. I actually added this slide. I totally ripped him off. Goro brought up failure for a little bit. I thought it was so awesome just for him and to touch on it because, again, no one really talks about failure. And he mentioned this quote. I was going to play the video, but I just don't trust this clicker. I'm like, everything's going to break. Watch. So at least the laser works. Yeah. If there's a cat in here, it'd be up on the wall. So he mentioned this, and I love it because Dan Rorty and I were both in the front audience, and we're mouthing the words together. That sounds kind of wrong, but we were mouthing the words together because this is so familiar and so strong to a lot of us. It's a scene from Rocky Balboa where he's talking to his son, who's kind of been fed on a silver spoon, and he's talking about how like life's so hard, and his dad doesn't get it because he's in the shadow of his dad, and blah blah blah. And like, Rocky's been so humble to his kid this whole time, and eventually he's just had enough, and he's just like, dude, like, quit your whining, And there's I'm gonna, kind of ad-lib it here, but it's not about how hard you hit. Sorry. Man, I'm totally screwing this up. It's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you get hit. Shit, I'm really messing up. God damn it, I should learn to read. So it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, and that's how winning is done. Now, I'm making that the shorter version of it, but the main point is that it's about rolling with the punches. It's not about trying to figure out your perfect strategy and just how tough you can be. It's about being able to take the punches and keep moving forward, fail and get up. And I don't want to continue down this path of like talking too much about this, but I will say, and you can write this down, you can tweet it, but like growth only happens when we get outside of our comfort zone. I think it's like a really important thing for us is to keep making ourselves uncomfortable until we're comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's when we can start to experiment. We can try things and know like, okay, that didn't work, rather than you're a fraud, you're going to mess up, like beating yourself up about things that we shouldn't really worry about. So one of the key things, this is a really personal story for me that I've never told anyone ever, and that is that when I was 14 years old, I got into 3D, I quit school, and I went down this really nervous journey of wanting to be a 3D artist. And being in Australia, like, we didn't have any industry. No one knew what a 3D artist was. Toy Story hadn't even come out when I got into doing 3D. And when that movie came out, I could finally tell people, like, that's what I want to do one day, because before that, no one had any idea. And there wasn't any studios. I thought maybe I could work at a TV station. I don't know. I got no idea. And finally, when I was 14, I think it was like 96, something like that, this brand new video game studio popped up, and they were on the news and everything. They're going to be doing this video game called Dark Reign, which was like this big real-time strategy game. It was cool. And the company's called Orin, and they were in Brisbane, Australia. They're being published by Activision. It was such a big deal because this is a AAA game. And for me, this meant that I had a moment where I could maybe get a job there, and I would be able to be relevant, I'd be able to do something cool. And I made it my life's purpose at that point. I was 14 years old. I was like, I'm going to work there. I'm going to get a job there. This is going to be it. I'm going to be obsessed with this. This is my life goal. I'm going to work on Dark Reign. I'm going to work for the company. And I had so many people telling me, like, you're going to fail. You should give up. You're not old enough. Like, anything and everything that people could say to me to kind of put doubt in my mind, they would. And I didn't know whether they were right or wrong. I was at the beginning of my journey. And I think all of us can really relate to this is that we're going to have people saying, get a real job. Art, that's not a real job. Go be a lawyer. Go do something else. And we also have that mentality of the starving artist, that it's not easy or you can't succeed. It's like once you're dead and you don't have an ear, then you can kind of make some money. It's just one of those things that really holds us back. And I had that a lot, and I decided I was going to put in 3 months every waking minute. I would work till 6 in the morning, and I would go to sleep. And the only reason I would go to sleep is because I was hitting render. And I was going to get up in 4 hours. The reason I was getting up in 4 hours is because that's when the render was going to finish. And I would do this cycle of 7 days a week, just obsess and push myself and do everything I could. And I think, again, we need to get out of our comfort zone. You don't go to school and do the minimal. That's set for everyone else. You want to take your own path and really push yourself and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. I'm kidding. But keep moving forward with this stuff, because you're only going to be able to hold yourself back. And the more you can push forward, the more you're going to do. So for me, I killed myself. I made this killer reel. I was so proud of it. And I put it on a VHS cassette. I sent it in, and I was waiting to see whether or not I was going to be a failure or whether I was going to succeed. And I got that email, and it's like, thank you for applying. Unfortunately, you suck, and you should give up. And I could have taken that to heart. I could have been like, well, all right, they're right, But I figured, okay, I'm going to try again. I'm going to give this one more try, and I'm going to see what I can do. And so I went to town. I got rid of all of my work. I started from scratch. Another 3 months, and I did everything I could. And at the same time, I had all of these people, again, telling me, like, dude, just go back to school. You're not old enough. You're not going to do this. No one's good enough to go and work at, like, a big place. And I remember I just fully immersed myself. Every chance I got, I went on IRC, and I found that they had a chat room where some of the developers of the video game would hang out. I would go in there, and I got to know everyone. I went and did some beta testing on the game. Anything I could to get close to them, I would. There was a conference with Greg Lane, the CEO. He was there. I knew he was going to be at this event, so I went along. 14-year-old kid, went up to him, and I said, hey, I'm 14 years old. I'm an artist. I want to apply for a job at your company. Am I too young? And he said, as long as you're good, we'll hire you. And I remember running home that day, like, just so much fire and passion, because one of those walls that had trapped me of failure had been broken down. People were telling me that I'm not old enough. Now I knew that that wasn't true. There's only the, are you good enough, that's going to hold me back. And I remember running for 2 hours all the way home, nonstop, getting to my computer and just working on my reel. And I had this obsession because I wanted that so badly. And I sent it in, this time on a CD-ROM. We're getting a bit faster. And I sent it on a CD-ROM, and I got rejected again. And I decided one last time, and if I fail at this, I'm going to give up on 3D, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to do what everyone told me to do because I'm not good enough, I'm not old enough, I'm a failure, all of these things. So I went back one more time, and I started from scratch. And this time around, I was getting good. Like, that obsession, that push, that determination, that made me work so much harder, grow so much over that time. And it made me a better artist. And so the next time around, I was ready. Like Craig Mullins, who was here last year, I was obsessing with his work. I was learning to map paint. I was animating, like Angie Jones, the Spicy Cricket was a big website back then. I was obsessing over her work. All these different artists who were influencing me indirectly, I was growing from them. And it was such growth in such minimal time because I immersed myself, because I had a goal, because I pushed forward. And at the same time, of learning all this, learning to animate, learning to model, do all this stuff, I was building my final reel. And like I said, if I didn't do it, if I didn't make it, then everyone was right, and I'm a failure, I'm a fraud. At the same time, I was kind of jaded. I remember being on IRC one time and going on the Quake channel, not Dark Rain, but Quake, just hanging out, talking to people, and someone mentioned the company Orin. And I was like, oh yeah, fuck those guys, they're a bunch of assholes, and kind of being really jaded and just kind of venting, just being stupid on the internet. Because we do all that. We think no one's listening and you can say what you want to say. And finally I sent my reel in, and I waited, and this was it. Like, this wasn't like rejection, this was life-changing. Am I going to make it, or am I going to give up and go away? And I got the email, I won't mention the guy's name, but I got the email from the head of 3D there, and he's like, Allan, like, your work over the past year has just grown so much. We can see how talented you've become over this time. You're amazing. We absolutely want to hire you. Unfortunately, you were online talking all this shit about our company, and because of that, here's the chat logs, we can't hire you. Thanks and good luck. And this is a moment where I could have denied it, be like, that wasn't me, that was my buddy or whatever, but I accepted responsibility. I fucked up. I self-sabotaged and derailed my life dream, my dream job that I wanted, that I obsessed about. I screwed it up by being stupid and saying some shit that I wasn't thinking about. And I think we've all had these moments where you gossip, you talk crap about someone, you're being a dick to people, and you don't think of the repercussions. And I think that we all kind of need to stop that. We need to really realize that people are listening, and even if they're not, it's just a terrible practice to have. So for me, I think the main message is, don't talk shit about companies, don't talk shit about people, don't get in other people's business. Being an adult, be responsible. I have so many stories I could go on about people applying for jobs in my company where they went and talked to someone. Like, I was on set in Australia on a movie, and there was a person in previs, a different department, talking shit to someone in LA, and that person in LA was talking to me, and in the other room, this stuff's being relayed, and then they apply for a job at my company, and we're like, we can't hire you because you're talking all this crap. And I've had companies talk crap about me and other guys, and then they're like, we want to hire you full time. And I've said, like, why would you hire me if I'm so shit? And they'd be like, oh, we're just trying to keep morale up at the company, make all the other people who aren't as good feel better about themselves, and like all this kind of crap. The thing is, you're not a good leader if you're going to talk negatively, and you're not a good employee if you don't believe in your team. Either way, it's just a habit to be really conscious of, that you don't want to sabotage the way that we all do. And for me, I learned that lesson back then. I put it in my pocket and I kept it all this time. And as much as I can, I try not to talk shit. I try not to be negative. So at the same time, I'll just quickly say that there's been times where I remember I was working on a movie, this mid-level guy came over from New Zealand, and I could tell he's kind of struggling to get settled and everything. He didn't have much money. So I remember I was going out one day, and it was his first week. I came back, and I bought him some groceries. You know, I just didn't really think about it. I was just like, here you go. You know, I noticed like you didn't bring any lunch today or whatever. Here's groceries. It should last you for the week. I didn't give it any thought. And like years later, he's like a senior supervisor at Weta. And I went over there with Autodesk for like a party or something. And he was there, and he had his wife. And he's like, this is the guy that I was telling you about years ago. And yeah, just saying that like this guy helped me out in this tough time. And for me, just thinking about that, I was just like, 10 years later, this guy's still holding on to this one thing that I hadn't even really thought about. And it was, for me, kind of amazing that like you can do something without thinking about it. It's not like I did it for any reason other than why not? You know, help someone else out. Like, what's the worst that can happen? But for them, it might mean so much more. And I think that that's really critical, is to start doing things without needing something back from them. And you know, along the way for me, like I recently got interviewed by a company, and they were like, you know, why do you share so much stuff? Aren't you afraid you're going to get replaced? And for me, I've never even thought about that. I've always thought, if I give away everything I know, then it's going to force me to learn new stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to have my 3 little tricks, and I'll be irrelevant within no time. So it's all about that growth that I keep talking about. So for me, like initially when I started sharing stuff, it was all about, I wanted to show stuff that it took me a while to figure out. I wanted to share that what was pain to me, so that way no one else has to go through it. And because of that, indirectly, I started getting notoriety. People started seeing me as an expert, or knowing that, well, he knows all about the subject. We need someone in for that program. Let's get him in. So bit by bit, I would go on forums. I would answer people's questions. I would go in chat rooms and help people out there. Bit by bit, I would start doing articles on my webpage or video tutorials. I would share my R&D, my scene files, things like that. Eventually doing magazines and talks and going beyond that and building up momentum. And it was all because like I got really excited about what I was doing. So for me, I just kind of felt like I'm just doing this for fun, but I'm also doing this to help others, not really wanting anything in return. But it really helped my career. And I say this part not to brag, but it's just, none of this is stuff that I ever would be on my radar or even think would be possible. But like bit by bit in Australia, I started getting a bit of a name for myself. I was a small fish in a small pond. And bit by bit, people would be like, get Allan, because he's the effects person. When I went to America, when I went to LA, that was one of these things where I'm now going to Hollywood, I'm going to be nobody, and I was okay with that. And on my lunch breaks, I would pop into studios, say hi to people, and they'd be like, Allan, you're not Allan McKay, are you? And it's just like, what is going on? Like, how do you even know who I am? Like that, you know, it shocked me. And then even going to ILM, I'm so humbled to even have been able to walk into that place. But it was one of those things, my first day, I had people coming up saying, you know, we love your work and blah, 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 blah. And like, you know, all these people. And I was just like, again, what the hell? Like this place has got some of the most amazing people on the planet. And again, I'm humbled, but I was nothing compared to these people. But to even know, like have people know who I was just like, what the hell? And beyond that, like with the podcast, stuff like that, now I'll have like lunch in LA or I'll be at a bar and, you know, someone like looks at you funny and it's just like, okay, like what's going on? And then I come over and it's like, dude, you know, I was telling my wife about this, I work at Sony and, you know, love the podcast or this and this. And it's just like all this I feel like is not relevant. VFX I feel like is just, we're not curing cancer, we're just doing art and we're getting paid for it. But here we are suddenly by just giving back, by doing these things that we're not really, you know, too concerned about. We're just doing it for the sake of doing it. All these things start happening. And I could talk about branding here and say that like it helps your job because then you don't need to look for work. You know, there's a lot of bonuses for it, but like you don't go with an insincere attitude in the beginning. You're doing it because why not? Go buy someone some groceries. Go help someone. If someone's stuck on something, go contribute on a short film that someone's doing. You never know what could happen down the line. So I think that's just really critical. Like I said, I want to skip through some of the stuff, but yeah, I mean, I just think like all this stuff is so relevant. For me, one of the big things, and this is what I really wanted to talk about, is money, just because I want to be really transparent about stuff that we don't usually talk about. And money especially is one of those things that we all get pretty uncomfortable with. It's one of those things that we don't like to talk about. And typically, we put a lot of self-value on ourselves based on how much we earn. So time is the most valuable commodity we have. And I remember watching this talk, this TED Talk on procrastination. I can't remember who it is. One of you guys could yell it out maybe. But it's this really awesome talk where this guy's talking about procrastinating and like his whole experience. But at one point, he built this life map that he wanted to kind of have a list of how many days he generally has left till he dies. Or you can also look up death clock, and it'll do the same thing. I got really obsessed. As soon as he did it, it was just like this kind of aha moment for me, where it's just like, yeah, this puts it so in perspective. Like, you've only got so many thousand or tens of thousands of days left until you're dead, depending on how much you drink. But it just kind of made it relevant how valuable those are. And every day you're giving for $300 or 500 euro or whatever you're seeing yourself as worth, is it really worth that much money in the long run? And I think because of that, like when one person's earning $50 an hour and another person's earning $70 an hour, you might resent that person because they're earning more than you. Therefore, they're worth more than what you are. Someone earning less than you, you might laugh at them like, haha, I'm 50 an hour, or whatever kind of BS it is. And obviously, money, we all need it. I think we should celebrate it. I don't think we should be apologetic about earning money. But at the same time, we are all very weird about it. No one ever talks about it. I don't expect people to share their salaries and how much they earn. One of the key things that I made recently, which is so work in progress, but I wanted to put together a tool which would allow you to go somewhere and be able to put in, like, this is the city I want to work in, this is how much experience I have, this is the discipline I'm in. Put in this information, and then from there, it would come back and say, you should charge 30 an hour or 60 an hour, how much ever generally it's worth. And I pulled together a lot of great minds who are in charge of budgeting, hiring teams, so all sorts of things that they've got a really good understanding globally of how much per city. And this is definitely version 00001 of what I wanted to do, but it's a start. So soon there'll be map painters, concept artists, a lot of other disciplines on there as well. But you can sign up now, and there's going to be a lot of information that you'll only be able to get there that I'll be sharing when you go through it. But the main idea for me, the main goal was that you'll be able to put in a lot more detailed information and get back later the exact euro or UN, whatever country you're going to be in. As well as, more importantly, it might say you should be earning 500 UN per hour or something like that. But then it's going to say, if you do these things, then you could charge this much more. Based on what you're putting in, it'll come back with results that will tell you the next step. Like, how could I earn an extra $10 an hour? Well, if I worked on my brand, if I ended up networking, doing these certain things, these are the things that would help me grow. And so that to me is the ultimate step, is I want to be able to build a tool to help you figure out, well, what's the next step for me? Should I start trying to position myself as a lead so I can get lead rates or whatever it's going to be, move to a different city, get your own visa so that way you can kind of command your own rates rather than being held to that. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But this is the part that I wanted to talk about. This is pretty much me earning money over the past couple of years. So 97, I was working on Half-Life, the video game. I was actually making good money. And again, this is stuff I've never shown anyone, but I think it's so pivotal, and I really don't care to put this up. But I think that the next slide I'm going to show, hopefully it's going to break some barriers you guys have about what's possible, because for me, it's definitely been a big aha moment about how I price myself out. And I've talked to a few people here about it, and everyone else is like, yeah, that's exactly what I do as well. So $25 an hour in 1997, okay? And then I got like a full-time job in 98, and I was earning $12 an hour. And then the next year, I was earning $15 an hour. And then 2000, I was earning $21 an hour. 2001, $25 an hour. So I'm doing okay. I'm still pretty young, but 2002, I was earning $32 an hour doing freelance work, working for studios. 2003, I got to $40 an hour. And I made a big leap in 2004. I got up to $60 an hour. And then in 2005, I was on 60 an hour. 2006, 60 an hour. 2007, 2008, I plateaued and I hit $60. I couldn't get past that. No matter what I did, I struggled for years to kind of go beyond this number. Everything I did, I would go to producers and say, look, give me 70 an hour. I'm worth it. I'm faster than everyone else. They were like, sorry, it's not in the budget. I would go and say, I've got more experience than everyone else. Got 10 years experience. Give me 70 an hour. Sorry, it's not in the budget. I could go to certain studios that are able to pay higher rates. There are definitely ones that you could go to where they'll have budgets set for senior people, but traditionally I'm going to places where they're putting down like, okay, an effects person is this, a lighter is this. They're not accommodating the fact that, great, you might have twice the amount of experience as someone else, but that's not in their budget, and I've got to respect that. So no matter what I did, I capped out at that number. So the next 2 years, I went up to $250,000 a year, and then 2 years after that, I went up to almost $500,000. This is me working as an artist from home on regular projects. This isn't me doing some amazing stuff or selling a new app that makes fart sounds or whatever it's going to be. This is me just doing straight 3D like everyone else in the room. And I would never in a million years even thought that that would be possible. Like 100 grand is like, whoa, holy crap. 150 is like baller. So to go to this sort of thing and beyond, like 2013, and we could go further down the line, but even at 2012, $500,000, that was just a game changer for me. It changed my life and also changed my outlook on a lot of this stuff. And this is one of those things that I want to keep reiterating is growth. For me, not going down the normal path that everyone else does. Okay? So one thing I did differently in these years was there's a book that my uncle, I don't think he lent it to me. I think that it was trash that he left at my house. And there's this old business book that I read when I was 14 years old. 14 was a big year for me. And it was one of those moments where I read this book. I don't know why. I think it's because I quit school and I was very into self-educating myself because I grew up originally in a small town where people who quit school were high school dropouts and they didn't have good jobs. They ended up being the failure, and you would point them out as like that person is a dropout. And I always had that fear when I left school that I didn't want to be that, and that's why I needed to continue to grow and continue to push myself. And again, I think that fear can be a driver. I didn't want to be a dropout. I wanted to push myself. So I read these books, and I had this book on communication. I still think today communication is the #1 thing out of anything that you're going to learn and be good at. Communicating is a key thing. So this is one of these big moments where I read this book. One of the many gems that I got was how to negotiate. And again, it's something that we're so uncomfortable with doing. And for me, what I realized was that by working out what the other person wants, going deep, not the surface stuff like, well, they want to hire you to get the job done and make a bit of money, but going deep on what someone really wants, that's when you can figure out, well, if I give them what they want, they'll give me whatever I want because I'm truly giving them the result. So one of the things that I'll quickly mention, it's more marketing strategies, but one of the famous marketing sayings was always like, we don't sell power drills, we sell holes in walls. Okay, so you're selling an end result. You're not selling the iPod here with like all these features and this much disk space and extended battery life and all these things. It's 1,000 songs in your pocket, except it's cropped off, but 1,000 songs in your pocket, okay? And that's a result. It's not like get this thing and competing with everyone else out there with all the features. It's imagine 1,000 songs in your pocket, not a CD with 12 songs or a bunch of CDs. It's this one device, 1,000 songs in your pocket. It's a result, okay? And there's so many of these. The lawnmower that instead of selling a service where we'll cut the lawn for you and we'll do it for this competitive price, it's imagine what you'll do with your Saturdays now that you have time back, okay? What are you going to do with your free Saturday? You're selling the dream of what's your pain point, your hope, dream, and fear. In this case, their pain point is, I got to mow the lawn on Saturday. Instead of me sitting back having a beer, watching someone else mow the lawn. That is selling a result. So for me, and I'll go through this quickly, but I thought about, okay, well, look, I can't go beyond this price. Well, if I'm 60 an hour, what do? How do I go beyond that? Well, what if I just take out the moving parts? And I've got this thing here I just kind of quickly threw together, which may or may not make sense, but I figured it'd be the easiest way to kind of jump through this slide really quick. And that is, let's say you got a project, it's $500,000. So in other words, it's 35 days to do the project. That's the budget. So let's say an effects artist for 35 days is $600 a day. That's $21,000 or $66 per hour. So let's just say that you budget something. You've already worked out the budget based on how many artists how much they're going to charge way before you ever look at hiring people. And then you figure out, okay, it's going to be $500,000. Let's go and start hiring people. So you might have tell everyone it's $500. So you've got a bit of a margin if they are expensive, but it's always going to end up around there. So end of the day, and this is what scared me, because I quit 3D for a while. I became a producer for a while just to try and do production stuff. I've done rent studios, I've managed teams. I know all about the scary part of not being in the trenches. Like if you're producing or you're managing a show, then the worst and scariest thing is that you're not in control of anything. You're watching those people trusting that they're doing their job, they're staying on schedule, trying to be in the loop, and it's so difficult to do, and it's so scary. And for me, especially in America, where it's like time and a half and double time if you go past 10 hours and all these things, this is where these numbers are dynamic. They're moving parts, and there's so many moving parts. You have 100 artists or 300 artists on your project. That is so much that you're having to take care of and make sure that you're not blowing out the budget. So let's just say you got 15 effects artists on a regular 35-day schedule. That's about $315,000 for the 35 days. So what if accumulatively they go over 7 days, and there's a bit of overtime and other fuzzy numbers that go in there too? You're not paying attention. They're working a bunch of weekends and doing a bunch of stuff, working late hours. Maybe they're even playing video games. Who knows? You don't know any of this, and then suddenly they clock in, and it's 42 days plus OT, like overtime, ends up being $441K for the entire budget, which was originally $315. So it's $126,000 over. This is the sort of thing that I think about when I'm budgeting projects, is how are people going to screw me? So for me, this is a simple thing where I'm like 60, 60, 60. How do I go beyond this? I simply sat down and figured, okay, well, what if I just go to what they're dealing with, their numbers, which is that you've got, only $500,000 to work with. Well, what if I just give them the assurance that I'm going to deliver the project on time? I'm not a fuzzy number. I'm not a moving part anymore. So instead, I would say I'll do the project for $25,000. So let's say I do that instead. I say to them, look, I'll do the project for $25K for my part in it. It means that if I do it for less time, then it doesn't matter. They've still budgeted the right amount of time. If I go over, that's on me. So if I do it in 20 days, then that essentially means I'm earning $138 an hour. So that's the short version of it. If you go to VFX REITs, I've actually got a lot of info on there on how to do the nitty-gritty, and I was going to talk a bit more about that. But the main thing for me was actually just the fact that I've had times where I've earned as much as $1,000 an hour by just doing a bid, by doing a straight-up project where I say, I'll do this for this much. And it might sound like, oh, well, my employer wouldn't do that, but that's where I want to get more into that, but I'm going to kind of plow through it a bit quicker. But basically, there are certain ways to do it, and it's more about selling the end result. Figure out what they want. I've negotiated equity. I've negotiated, let's say that they're going to say, I can only pay you $40 an hour instead of 60, and you think, well, okay, what they want, their underlying thing is they want to go for this budget. That's all they want to work with. Then I might say, well, okay, that's fine. I understand that you can only make this budget. Well, how about instead you give me a lead position on this project instead? Because for them, it might cost them any money to give you a title. But for you, it means the next project, you can charge lead rates, so you go up to 70 an hour or whatever it's going to be. So there's certain things that might be cheap for them, but they're priceless to you. So you negotiating, knowing what they want, you can get all these things. Like I've had people be like, okay, I'll go cheaper, but you give me all of your computers when the project's over. And I'm serious. They've left with a bunch of their really powerful machines because they negotiated that. And for them, they're like, all right, well, we're done with them. We don't care. So figure that stuff out. I'm going to plow through the rest of this really quick. And Patrice, I know that I've got 8 minutes left. So one of the big things I always found is, like Richard Branson said, always say yes. This isn't the exact quote I was looking for, but if you say yes to everything, then you'll never be out of work. You'll have all these great opportunities. I feel like this is true to a certain point, and then it's the other way around, okay? So I feel like at the beginning of your career, say yes to everything. Someone's got a short film, do it. If someone says to work for free, I think that as long as it's not go to work for a studio, but someone's like, hey, we got this cool short film we're doing, we can't pay you, but it's good experience. Why not? If you've got nothing else going on, jump on as many things as you can. Keep saying yes. But there's going to be a certain point where you got to flip it around and start saying no. And I won't get too far into it, but for me, that was one of these things where I always said yes to everything, and it meant that I had all these opportunities, but at a certain point I wanted to focus on the big picture, things that I wanted to do. And if I'm always in reaction mode, in other words, I'm always doing everyone else's stuff, then I'm never going to have time for what I want to focus on. So for me, wanting to do my mentorship, I had to say no to a bunch of stuff. For me, wanting to do a lot of bigger projects, I've had to learn to say no. And that's always been a big thing. Like another thing is having a single goal. So I always think by having one laser-focused goal instead of 100, even if it means like you give a time constraint of 1 month to do it, you have that one goal that anything that keeps coming up to you, you can start the question, is this aligned with my goal? Does this help me get closer to my goal? And that allows you to kind of figure your moral compass out about whether you should be doing it, saying yes or no. So I've had projects come up to me a lot in the last couple of years. Like 2015 was my year of saying no. It's because 2014 at the very end, I was saying yes to some stuff. I started to see a lot of fires starting to happen. A lot of the quality of what I was doing started to fall apart because I was spreading myself thin. So I made a goal that 2015 I would say no to everything if it didn't align 100% with the goal that I had. So I had this guy, Eddie Murphy, I had his best friend Trent contact me saying, Eddie wants to meet you, he wants you over to his place this week because Eddie wants to start directing. This is the new thing, he's mastered every craft in the world, for art at least, and directing is the one new frontier that he has to conquer. He wants you to do like a 3-picture thing. Come over, we're going to hang out, we're going to go through a bunch of movie scripts, and this is going to be a really cool opportunity. He wants to build that relationship. That to me was like, maybe I say yes and I go have a few beers and hang out with Eddie Murphy, or no. Like instantly is the gut feeling of this doesn't align with my goal. My goal was to launch my mentorship, and I didn't want to be distracted. So I had to say no to that. I had to say no to Independence Day, League of Legends, VFX supervising the entire film, Deadpool, Transformers 5, all of these other things because I wanted to crush that one goal. So Patrice, I'm aware I got 5 minutes, and we're good. So other things is, you son of a, so I said before, like your network is your net worth, okay? So I think it's really important to build relationships everywhere. I think that the more you're able to do this, like the more opportunities come up. Like there's the whole like got to be in it to win it. The what ifs. Okay, so for me, I don't apply for jobs. I always taught you guys like writing emails. I don't apply for a job. I apply for a relationship. I think it's really critical. I was going to mention Tim Miller here. So as a joke, when I was 17, I applied for a job at Blur Studio and Blizzard. I didn't think I was ready, and this goes back to where I was talking about you could wait till things are perfect. When I realize 100% I'm at Blur level, I didn't do that. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it as a joke. What's the worst that could happen? So I sent in my stuff, and I didn't expect anything back. I got a rejection letter from Blizzard like a year later. Tim Miller, though, the director of Deadpool here, he contacted me when I was like 17, and he's like, love your stuff. Do you want to come work at Blur? Now, I could have waited like 10 more years, which is what I probably was going to do, until I was ready to do that. Instead, I didn't. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. What's the worst that can happen? And I want you guys to think about that. Do things now. Ready, fire, aim. Do it, and then you always go back and apply again. And again, just don't talk shit on IRC, because that doesn't work out too well. So with Tim, I actually turned him down. I wasn't old enough to go over there yet, but what I did instead was I kept the relationship going. Every couple of months, without being annoying, I would email him some new work and say, hey. And it meant that I built a relationship over time. And it meant that when it was time to go to Blur, it wasn't about me going to a job interview or anything. It was just like, whenever I'm ready, I've got that job. Now, if you imagine doing that times 1,000, doing that 3 times a day, just fire out an email to places that you think that you're not good enough for yet, imagine how many relationships you're going to build over a year. That could be 1,000. So keep doing that. Don't think I've got to wait till I'm ready. Just do it, and just see what happens. Finally, in my 15 seconds I got left, well, I'll just quickly say that, like, let's say, you got to be in it to win it. So my whole mindset is that if you aren't going out to a bar at night, you might meet the love of your life. You never know. You could be, hanging out with rock stars. Anything could happen. But if you stay at home, that's not going to happen. I've got a Ryan Reynolds story, but I'll leave it for another time. But with this, like for instance, I could have not applied to Blur, and who knows, maybe I wouldn't have gotten it. I could have not taken the job in LA. I couldn't, There's all these different things. My fiance, I could have, when she contacted me saying, hey, I'm going to come to LA, do you want to hang out? I was in, I had screwed up my back, and I could have said, in fact, I wrote a big letter to her saying, I can't do it, no, I'm in terrible shape right now. Last minute, I hit delete, and I was like, yeah, let's hang out. And I look back now, I was like, well, what if I didn't do it? So you're better off saying yes to everything, rather than sitting your ass and be like, I better not, So just kind of think about that. It's all about, you got to be in it to win it. You got to do all that. I want to talk about burnout because I think it's such an important thing, but I won't. I brought up this guy just because we had a big argument on stage about burnout, and one of the key things was he was saying how important sleep is, and I think this dude's so much smarter than I am, but we went back and forth about this because the critical thing was for me is, even if you're burning out, you got to find passion. You got to find that thing that is your release. For some people, it might be like me going out and doing shots and partying when I was younger. I'm saying younger, but that was my release at the end of the night. But for some people, it might be going home and playing with their daughter or their son, getting that release. But that, to me, having a purpose outside of work is so much more critical than getting that extra hour or two of sleep. I'll quickly say in 5 seconds that when I worked at ILM, one of the cool things was when I left, I created my own company and sponsored myself to live in the States, which I probably shouldn't say. I'm probably going to get deported on the way back now. But it was one of these things that usually when you go work in a country, this is following the norm. What happens is you go work for somewhere, you get paid like $20 less than you're worth. I'm not saying ILM, I'm just saying Rhythm Hughes, wherever you're at, that's what you get paid because they have your visa, they have leverage over you. And I didn't want to have that. I didn't want to be owned by a studio. So I built my own studio, sponsored myself, and then I was employed by myself and rented out to other companies. These are like little hacks, little tweaks you can do that give you 100% freedom to do whatever you want. So thinking outside the norm, doing your own path, doing you rather than going with the flow of what everyone else is doing. I'm leaving now. I'm going to walk away. Yeah, I should explain this one, but I'm not going to. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there, but there's so much more I want to talk about, but yeah, unfortunately I'm out of time because next year I'm going to do like a 3-hour session, 4-hour session, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, I'm working on it. All right, guys, but I'll leave it there. Maybe if you guys shoot me an email, maybe I can do like a live private session for us or something. I apologize for having to race through this, but yeah, thank you again, everyone, for everything. I also want to say thank you to Patrice and Ben and everyone else involved. This has been amazing. It's my 3rd time here, and I'm going to keep talking just because I'm an asshole. But you're going to be dragged to the stage. Thank you, everyone. I love this event so much. And next year, come back. All right.